Hey guys, you're listening to Metal Matters, a weekly Gimme Radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill. If you're a fan of heavy metal, extreme music, and all the genres in between, this is for you. You can find us every week on every streaming platform known to man: Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play. Subscribe and never miss out. This week, I'd like to welcome my friend Sera Timms to the Metal Matters podcast. If you've been listening to my Gimme Radio show, The Sacred and Profane, you might have caught some of her other bands. She has Black Mare, which is a solo project. Also, Ides of Gemini, which also features another good friend of mine, the renowned metal journalist Jay Bennett. She has a brand new project called LVXURI that just released a video on Revolver. We talk about that. We talk about the occult. We talk about consciousness. We talk about the fear of AI and possible dystopian futures. All in all, it's a pretty cool episode. I'd like to thank everyone who's been listening for these last few months. Really appreciate it. I'm having a lot of fun doing this show, and I hope you guys are too. So now I won't waste any more time, and we'll get into it. Sera and I spoke over the phone early one Saturday morning, particularly early for her, because she's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. Nonetheless, we made it happen. You know, I just realized that you're the first woman to be on the Metal Matters podcast.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's been a dude fest since day one. So
I'm really good at existing in the center of dude fest.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. But it's not by design. Like I didn't set out to like, oh, let me have Sera on to be the first lady on the show. It's just that
right.
I've always been a fan of your output creatively, and I thought it'd be a very natural guest to have you on. So
great. I hope man with the guys.
So recently you have a new project and video that premiered on the Revolver site. And so I mean, you have a lot of work out there, and it's all very high quality. And this new thing is a little bit different. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the last 2 years has been pretty I've been in deep transitional mode, kind of not having any idea where I'm going or what's next, and I was asked to do a performance for this thing called the Secret Sisterhood, which is a woman who gathers a bunch of different women, I think it's 7 to 10 women, who usually they're writers, comedians, actors, musicians. She has one musician do a performance at the Masonic Lodge in Hollywood once a month. I don't know if they're still doing it anymore. They were doing it in New York too for a little while. But I was invited to do a performance, and they're all based on the moon cycles. And so it was a full moon in Scorpio, and at that time I had an idea that I wanted to push Black Mare Black Mare, my solo project, in a more electronic direction, because Black Mare is something I started as a solo project, and then I wanted it to sound like a band though.
Right.
So I always I would use real drum samples when I was programming drums, and then get a live drummer to play what I programmed. So basically, I kind of made a band on the computer, and then would get a band to play live with me. But I came to a point where I was like, why am I making so much work for myself? Why don't I just actually make it more of a solo project, and not have to get a whole band to do everything in the live situation. And so at this ritual for the Scorpio, I think it's Scorpio new moon, I decided to perform the first song I ever written, to represent the birth of Black Mare, and also the death of the old version of Black Mare that I was saying goodbye to, and then to write an electronic song of Black Mare, which would be the new birth, Scorpio's, life, death, rebirth cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I wrote this electronic song that actually months later I realized that it wasn't even Black Mare, but that it was a whole different project because it just was too far away from Black Mare. It was like a whole nother kind of musical identity that was coming out. And so then it became very clear to me that was LVXURI, and a kind of archetypal framework was intuitively built around that. And, Black Mare and all the projects I've been in have been about really, I feel like the energy around them is being in a very dark but transcendent place, like the void, essentially. But it's all kind of like dark, understanding that there's light, but kind of being surrounded in dark.
Right.
And lunar energies. And then LVXURI is more like this expression of solar energy, Christ consciousness, more of a, I don't want to say male or female, but it is kind of like a male archetypal role, even though like the face of LVXURI is this very feminine force.
Right. Well, you mentioned solar energy, and typically the moon is a female sort of archetype, and the sun is like a male archetype. So it's
yeah, exactly. And so of the singer archetype that goes with LVXURI, her name is Aurora Dawn, and so she's sort of like this new dawn, this new sunbirth, and it goes along with my own personal evolution, which is working on incarnating Christ consciousness within myself, which is of course all about all of this, but it's the solar consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so with LVXURI, there's actually this in my mind, it's sort of the alchemical marriage of the masculine and feminine, because I've got this male character within me in LVXURI that I call Ray, and he's sort of like the ray of the sun that illuminates this feminine archetype, which is Aurora Dawn, who is like a woman who's kind of integrated both the sun and moon. So that's why it became sort of its own separate project. And it's also integrating the machine and future kind of technologies and ideas, whereas a lot of my previous stuff, Gemini and Black Mare, has been much from the well of antiquity.
I was actually going to comment on that because, LVXURI has like a very modern, like looking forward vibe to it, and like I was going to say, the other material, Black Mare, definitely looks more into like antiquity and uses these sort of archaic, sort of ideas, like visually at least. You know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. And I think that so like for a long time, well, I grew up very kind of like techie. That's sort of just my mind with Gemini, and my brain likes technology a lot. And I use so much technology in Black Mare, even though I try and make it all sound old. It's all made on computers, so it's very actually technology masked as something old to be like in the cave, the archetypal cave. But I spent a good, 10, 15 years of my musical life in, I consider it almost like in the tomb, like exploring the tomb, essentially, of what we were, what humans were, where we came from, trying to understand like what we are and how we got to where we are now. And also for a while, for a good like 7 to 10 years, I decided I wanted to kind of reject technology a bit because I didn't like where it was taking humanity. And now I've sort of flipped around on that and decided that I don't want to escape it. I want to try to integrate it into my own psyche and try to infuse the technological framework in our society with light, awareness and consciousness. And so LVXURI is also about that.
What are some of the things about technology that you thought were negatively affecting our society?
So, if you look at like the idea of AI, and you look at how much things are being automated, it's kind of scary to me because, even if AI doesn't actually happen, there is, I forget what it's called, but it's like machine intelligence or something like that. And so that's of course going to become, that's already very like weaponized,
Right.
And so that sort of thing where we already governments are already using the technology to more easily, go and kill people in war tactics.
Like
and
drones
wipe
and
out
whatnot.
villages. Yeah, and people are just looking at a screen while they're dropping bombs, which is, that's pretty scary. And then also, like I was listening to something yesterday. It was Douglas Rushkoff, and he was talking about how the idea of the algorithms of technology and how technology is supposed to be something that serves humanity, but now the algorithms are being used by corporate culture to control humanity. And so essentially, and it's not for the good of humanity, it's for capital. It's all just to make profit and to control behavior via our phone's algorithms and our little alerts and the advertisements were shown and all that stuff. And so it essentially ends up where the technology is something that's training us more than we're training the technology. And that's where you sort of lose your autonomy as a force of creation in the world, and you become a slave to your own creation. And so that's really the thing that scares me about technology. But I think it's important to look at that and not think, don't resist the change, right? It's impossible to resist change in society. And if you do, you're going to be an escapist and you're not going to be able to affect it and be like a co-creator of your reality. And so now I'm in a place where I'm much more interested in rejoining the force of creation of the modern world and looking at like how we're moving into the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's a lot of different theories about AI, and there's this doomsday sort of dystopian enslavement of humanity or extermination of humanity by some consciousness that's going to come out of all this, AI. And I mean, is that something that you are afraid of as well? I mean, that kind of crosses my mind that we're going to end up in the Terminator,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely think, I think anything is possible. So, I think that is truly a possibility, for sure, even though we haven't experienced it yet. I think there's a lot of things we think are impossible because we just haven't experienced it yet. So I think that's very possible. And I think that, if that was to happen now, based on the uses that we now have for technology, like we're creating a real monster, So absolutely, I think that's something scary. I mean, but it's no scarier ultimately than like all the apocalyptic theories, all the including the AI one that would wipe out humanity. It's really just like a fear of death if you break it down. It's like your own fear of death, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because, yeah. And so like if you get comfortable with that, so that's what I've been working on over the last, several years is just get comfortable with death, and then none of those things are scary. I think that's part of why I went the escapist route from technology for a long time. Like, it's happening so fast, there's no control over it. But then if you just sit still and think about it for a little while, we're all going to die at some point, and we could die at any moment, there's no guarantee of living for another 10 seconds even. You just don't know what's going to happen. And so once you accept that, well, then the theory of AI and another consciousness, it just becomes interesting, And there's always some sort of war going on because I think that I subscribe to the idea that the reality that we live in of this form is all created by our consciousness and our awareness. So there's always some sort of war going on or some sort of threat, if it's the threat of the H-bomb or it's the threat of AI. There's always been something for as long as humanity has been conscious.
One of the things about AI that I think about sometimes is, I'm quite fond of cats. I love cats. I have a cat. And they're small and they don't really pose a threat to you because they're so much smaller. They're like a fraction of your size. However, they have the mentality of a total predator. They're killers. They're like these little murderers that live in your house.
Absolutely.
And if my cat was 20 pounds, I would be terrified of that. That cat would kill me. It would rip me to shreds if it was hungry.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I guess like one of the things is instinct and logic, and things like morals and reason are things that humans project on things. Like we project all these ideas on our pets, our animals and whatnot. This is Fluffy, my cat. She would never hurt me. But if that cat was hungry and it was the two of you, you're definitely going to become dinner for that cat if he could take you out.
Right.
So the thing with AI, it's like if, and it's a big if, amongst all of these electronics and algorithms and whatnot, that consciousness does arise from this soup of technology, it's unlikely that there would be this abstraction of morality and, like projected overlaid on that. And that humanity, if you look at the way, it's destroying the planet and, altering the environment and all these sort of things, that something that is far superior to us would find a way to possibly either get rid of us or have us do its bidding in some way. You know what I mean? And I guess that's where like the Cyberdyne systems, Terminator, Matrix, dystopia, sort of that idea probably comes from that, that realization. I don't know. Scary.
It's so scary. I agree with you because, I think of it in terms of, it's like with AI, if we really do create another consciousness, I feel like we're creating our twin, essentially. Okay. We're creating a twin, right, of humanity, because it's all based on machines to do things better than we do, essentially, is why we even started creating, mechanizing things and creating technology. And so I feel like, with that said, like this goes back to like my whole intent and idea behind luxury. So if we are creating a consciousness based on technology out of our needs to control and dominate the resources on Earth at the expense of human good, well then, you know what? We're probably creating a horrific enemy in this AI consciousness that made bloom. And so I think that it's incredibly important, for the survival of humanity. Even if we don't create AI, it's incredibly important to do this. But that's just like AI. The idea of AI and the blooming consciousness is yet another idea to absolutely amend society and to expand our consciousness immediately, ASAP, to realize the interconnectivity of all things and the energy which runs through us all, which also will be connected to that consciousness of the AI. However, right now, if we're creating an AI all based on form and the governing of form, it's like we're creating an ego AI right now.
Yeah, actually that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're creating like this like ego twin of humanity. If you look back at like, pre-agriculture, it was like matriarchal times before the patriarchy. And there's some evidence that, that the patriarchy to some degree abused their power creators. You know, when it first started, a lot of the evidence that they figured out, I mean, who really knows? But a lot of the theories say that, like, you know, before science, like, they didn't realize that that males were needed for creation, for instance. Back in the day when the Venus figures were made, you know, the large Venus figures that were found in the caves. Mm-hmm. And so the women apparently, you know, had all of the power at that time. And so it kind of makes sense, you know, if the women had all of the power, that it would shift to men having all the power, like where it is now. And so now I think we're in kind of like a really dangerous but potentially exciting transitional time where, you know, the patriarchy has really taken the method of domination and ruthless extraction from the earth with oil and all that stuff. As far as it can, we're hitting a wall with that as far as longevity goes, you know, scientifically speaking. And now the feminine needs to come in. And there's a lot of I think we as women have to be really careful, because what we should not do is have this angry upheaval, which a lot of you know, groups and forces of women are doing, which I understand, and it's good to get things out and to be open, like a plant bursting forth. You know, it's always a child being born, and there's always a little bit of violence with it. But I feel like once the statement's been made, like, hey, we're here, we're powerful, we're coming back, we're coming to take our power. Okay, we made the statement. Now let's try and see what we can do with the foundation that's already there. Let's try and build our structure of whatever feminine wisdom there is and feminine archetype, feminine architecture. Let's try and flow it into the patriarchal structure. So, like, if you look at the patriarchal structure, it's very much like mathematical logic, boxes, you know, all this stuff, very clear hierarchical arrangements. And then feminine architecture tends to be more organic and flowing. So it's almost like, let's put some rivers in between all the boxes, you know, let's use the structure that there is with something clear, new, refreshing, organic, all that stuff.
What I'd like to do is talk a little bit more about the music.
Yeah,
you know, because there's obviously a whole sort of vista of stuff we can talk about with LVXURI. Now, you have this one track and this one video that premiered recently on Revolver.
Right.
And I'm assuming that there's going to be more material surfacing at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting, and this is like a very modern way of people to release music, is that it's almost like the old school, like R&B sort of world where a single would come out. You'd have these singles that would just appear.
Right.
And, you know, now they'd be coupled with videos, and it's like a very bite-sized presentation of people's music now. And a lot of people have done that. I know, Gavin from Burn has a new project, and he's been kind of doing a very similar thing where he'll drop a song here and there's a video, but there isn't like, you know, an LP or anything available. Is that some sort of approach that you've been adopting for this project?
So I went kind of back to the river idea. I went it's been very organic aside from the actual creation of the art, which has all been very digital. Mm-hmm. But basically I had this one song, and I was living with a girlfriend, and next to another girlfriend, Neda Afsari, who is a photographer and videographer. And they had this plan. We were just like these friends, basically, who were all hanging out together a lot. And they had a plan to go to the Madonna Inn and do some photos. And I was like, well, I have this song. Maybe we should do a video. And they were both like, yeah, let's do it. And so we just decided to create it, not knowing exactly what we would do with it. But I came to think of it as planting a seed. because I knew that I wasn't going to be ready to release an album for a while, but there was just something in me that wanted to get the seed of luxury planted in the world. And so I just decided to do a one-off, and then I was like, well, it's kind of cool to release something where you don't actually have anything really to sell behind it. You're just doing it because you love it. It's very unusual. Usually there's a whole plan, but it's behind a tour, it's behind an album, and it's all very practical because you do need to make money as a musician. But at this point, luxury is brand new and doesn't necessarily need to make money. And so I just thought it would be a nice thing to plant into the world. And I tend to work on multiple different projects at a time. And I do best when I have deadlines. And as long as nobody knows about luxury, I'm not going to have any deadlines. So I figured that I really needed to get out in the world so that there became a force from the outside world looking back in on me saying, when's there going to be more? And so that would make me have to do some deadlines.
How was the response been so far? I mean, I know a lot of people are into it.
Yeah. It's been like, I don't know. It's been universally positive.
Good.
Really great. Which I'm happy about because to me it was like so different. And to me it feels a lot lighter than what I've done before. But I guess the music is dark enough that the dark music fans still seem to be into it, which is cool.
Question that arose with me is, I know like a lot of artists, I mean, and this is completely different, but King Diamond, for example, I know this is like, people are like, all right, how are you going to connect King Diamond to this? But, King Diamond versus like, the guy who is King Diamond, they're two different people almost. Like there's King Diamond, the idea, like the character. Yeah. And is that sort of like what's going on with Aurora and yourself? Or is it like one aspect of your personality being reflected through that? And, I don't know, just something that came to mind.
Yes. So, yes, totally. Aurora, Black Mare Black Mare started out more as like me and then kind of evolved more into I realized, an aspect of myself and my consciousness, and which the last part of it was the Death Magic Mother, which was very extreme part of my psyche in the death void. And then Aurora Dawn is kind of a newly discovered part of me, which is she's kind of like I'm calling her a solar concubine, essentially, because she's still got this, there is light in their sun, but she's still got this sort of desire for she hasn't achieved unity, but she's all about achieving unity with the solar consciousness. And so there's like this idea of push and pull. Like she's really into the idea of are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's real quiet,
That's okay. She's really into the idea of subservient to something greater than her when in reality it is within her. But so there's this bondage theme for her. But it's really about bondage to herself. So I don't know. I'm still figuring her out, but
so do you have more material? Like, is there stuff already produced that you have, or
No, I'm working on demos now still, and I've just had my mundane life, for lack of a better word, has not allowed me time for the last few months. But actually, this weekend I have time, so I think I'm going to get back into it. And I'm dealing with like technology changes because I've upgraded into a new software, so I'm having to learn new technology. So I've been procrastinating a little bit on that.
What are you using now? What program?
Well, I'm using Ableton.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and which is really, really great for making beats because honestly, I've done everything on GarageBand up until now. And it's just, oh my God, it is so tedious to make beats on GarageBand the way that I do it. So I'm like dragging and dropping drum beats to make beats on GarageBand, which is like gonna kill me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm learning how to make beats on Ableton, which is totally amazing, but it's like completely a whole new framework in your brain.
Yeah,
which is fun and exciting.
I mean, that's like what a lot of hip hop and R&B people use. That it's really designed for that stuff, for making beats.
Yeah,
and, it's great. It's like, do you know a Lop who used to be in Dialect?
I don't.
Yeah, he's the guy who turned. Actually, Cliff from Isis is the one who was like first politicked about using Ableton. And then a Lop was the guy who's like, check this out. This is what you can do with beats in Ableton. And I was like, okay, this is insane. And I'm not a very good drum programmer, but it's like it's the sky's the limit with that program.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited about it. Yeah, that's like, well, beats is like such a huge thing for luxury. Like I've been listening to hip hop for like the last 2 years, like pretty extreme. And I've just gotten really more into the idea of beats than I've gotten really deep in programming beats. But that's really what got me comfortable actually into the more electronic realm, even though I love a lot of experimental electronic stuff. But I just got really excited about, I've been excited about hip hop beats and drum programming over the last couple of years.
What's some of the hip hop artists that you listen to?
Oh my God, I listen to a lot of like just all of the modern stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to actually hip hop radio.
Oh, okay.
So I'm listening to Drake and J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Future. I like the R&B stuff too, even like Post Malone. Travis Scott.
Travis Scott's so great. I like Travis Scott a lot.
Travis Scott's really, he's really cool. And then I like the ladies too. I like Cardi B, Nicki Minaj. I'm into those ones. And then I'm also into, I really just got turned on to, I grew up listening to like Ice Cube and Ice-T actually, and the Ices. And, oh my God, who's the other one? Like the classic. Oh, Too Short.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So those are like the three kind of hip hop artists that I grew up listening to. And I've just been finally getting into like old hip hop and really learning about it. I'm a little behind, but I've been watching the Hip Hop Evolution.
Oh yeah, that's a cool series, yeah.
On Netflix, which is like, oh my God, totally fascinating, blowing my mind in so many ways. So that's been like a big kind of canon of inspiration for me.
One of the things I really like about some of the newer artists, like Travis Scott, is that there's the production, like the beats, and then the sounds. It's like almost this like soundscape that goes on behind the music. You know what I mean? As part of that supports the the vocal parts. And I think is really cool. It's almost like Yesu or like Godflesh or something with like rapping on top of it,
I agree. Like I love the production of modern hip hop. There's something like, it's almost like ethereal, It's like so clean and polished, and there's so much like kind of ambient sound in there, like just these subtleties. And they do so much with so little, as far as what you hear in the final song.
With that all said, I would be remiss if I don't make this statement right now, because I mentioned a lot. I mentioned dialect. I mentioned modern hip hop. I feel that dialect predated this style by like 10 years, and that those guys should be getting a check from these dudes, if you ask me, because what they were doing in like 2002 is like way earlier. It predates all this stuff. And anyone out there who wants to check out some really cool, very, very creative hip hop music, check out Dialect. And that's spelt Dalek. And they're incredible. Yeah. So there you go.
Right.
But
I haven't listened to Dialect in a long time. Actually, since I started listening to I listened to Dialect and loved it like 10 years ago. But then I go through phases with music. And it was actually Cliff from Ides who brought that to my attention.
Yeah.
Who brought Dialect to my attention.
Yeah, I mean, they've toured together a number of times, I believe, Isis and Dialect. So,
yeah. Yeah. So I think that's true. But I think that, it's the story of our time, massively rich and famous musicians get the credit for something some obscure innovator actually created, who wasn't as ambitious about becoming rich and famous.
Now, one of the things that also strikes me about some of the stuff creatively you're doing is there's a very strong visual aesthetic to, it's not just the music. There's like an art sort of direction that accompanies the music. And do you have a formal background like in any of that, like in design or, video or film? Okay.
I do. Yeah. I started, before I was a musician, I was really into photography. I wanted to actually be a photographer for a living at one point, but then I was too into music actually to commit to that path. So I went to school for art. I got a degree in art, and digital video and photography were my areas of focus. Once I graduated, I started working in graphic design and like the kind of film industry in Hollywood. And I didn't really like that because you really have to commit your life to thrive in that area. So I kind of just decided to use it for my own creative expression, which is what I've been doing since I've been making music. There's always been a visual side. When I'm working with other musicians, I always describe the ideas I want to implement visually. As far as the sound goes, it's just kind of the natural zone that I live in. It's equally as important to me. If it was up to me and I had the means to do it, I would make every single album would also be a film, like Pink Floyd's The Wall. It would all be that.
A number of years ago, there was this band called the Black Heart Procession. I love them. Yeah, they're great. There's an actual movie. I have the DVD of this. It's they self-produced a film which tells the story of that Tropic of Love record that came out. And,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's done very lo-fi, but it's whoever directed and edited that thing did a great job because it actually does unfold this narrative, and it's all just like friends acting in it, and band members,
right?
And it has like a video quality to it. There's no dialogue. It's all just the songs, and then these visuals that accompany it. And I always thought that was such a great idea. And this is probably like 2004 or 5 when that came out, and now I imagine it's probably easier to do that, but time consuming.
Right.
Editing takes forever.
It does. Yeah, for sure. I'm considering it with LVXURI. I mean, for all the new songs, my lyrics are always pretty visual too, so it's pretty easy to get visual ideas. What's always stopped me is perfectionism from actually doing that. There's so many opportunities though, as far as like you can really make things look great, even just filming with your iPhone, for instance. These days, you just get like a stabilizer. You can film a lot of cool things on your own. So I'm considering doing that with LVXURI. I suppose it depends on the time and resources. It's back to the flow. It depends on what the flow sort of allows. But it's certainly an idea that I would like to see happen. And if not on this first album I'm making, then perhaps on the next album.
Yeah, I mean, it totally lends itself to that. Are there any particular filmmakers that you draw inspiration from?
My first favorite filmmaker, and I guess it probably remains, was Akira Kurosawa.
Okay.
And actually, the first thing I ever saw of his was not really one of his films. It was one of his experimental films. It was a collection of shorts called Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all just these sort of dreamscape. There's very little dialogue that he made as a more experimental thing. Let's see here. I'm on the spot here. I haven't been watching film for like the last 2 years, so I'm not in that frame of mind. But I grew up watching David Lynch, of course. I love Kubrick. I love the classics. Let me think about that. And I know there's a lot more that I'm not thinking of right now. I was shown, I do like experimental filmmakers like Maya Deren.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Her work at all, yeah. She's really great. Who else? What's all that's coming at the top of... Oh, Wong Kar-wai is really great.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hong Kong Bank, was it Hong Kong Express? Was a film I saw by Wong Kar-wai. I believe he did that. That was like back in like the 90s or something.
Yeah, totally. And then there was there was a woman, I forget her name. She did a few movies. One of them was called The Headless Woman. One was called it's the name of where I used to live. It's not La Brea. It's like the name of a street. Anyway, this woman who directed The Headless Woman. She's Latin. I don't know. I can't even talk about it because I don't remember enough. But she remains influential in my psyche.
Yeah. It's just this energy out there. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many more. I'm just not thinking of them right now.
With Black Mare, that's something that you're always going to be doing that, right? Because it is basically a solo project, right?
Yeah, totally. So Black Mare is, that's me. It's a huge part of who I am. I feel like the Black Mare is in a little bit of hibernation right now.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm doing with Black Mare, I disbanded my the live band for various reasons. And so, but again, that was something that was, the live band, they were wonderful. Bless them all for helping me. They did a really great job. And it will come back as a live band at some point, but the last incarnation of it is done. And they weren't creators, they were just playing what was already written. And so that felt like it kind of reached its end. And the creative flow is going towards luxury right now. So with Black Mare, I have an acoustic set that I wrote, that they're very Black Mare songs, but they're just in very kind of simple acoustic format right now. So I'm just doing sparse acoustic shows here and there with Black Mare.
How is that actually? That's something I've always wondered about, is performing acoustically by yourself. How is that exactly? It's
very humbling because I'm not a very good guitar player. Like I can get around the guitar and I can write on it and be creative with it. But again, that's another thing I rely a lot on technology for.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the acoustic, you can't, I like to do things that are challenges to myself so I don't get bored or stuck. And so actually I have a twin sister and she was very inspirational to me in getting me to really sit down and really learn how to play a few songs on the acoustic guitar because she's a superhero. She's like a mother of 4 and she teaches jazzercise and homeschools her kids. And she also decided to just learn guitar and join a bluegrass band too.
Wow.
And so, she's like, Sarah, just here, learn a few chords, sit down, just do it. So she kind of got me to do, she's like, here's a song, learn the song, she has all these traditional songs that she learns that are just a few chords and they're great. And so she kind of really opened my mind to that idea where I've always been very techie and progressive minded and, into odd time signatures and all that stuff. and putting weird chords together and changing keys. And she kind of opened my mind to like, hey, like really, the Bob Dylan truth. Like you just need, like, what do you say? 3 chords in the truth, 2 chords in the truth. I can't remember. But she opened my mind to that idea and that reality. And it's refreshing because it's very humble. You have to take your mind out of it. You just kind of have to feel. You just have to be real and simple. And it's a really beautiful place to go to because you kind of remove expectations. You take your intellect out of it, which I think everyone should learn how to do. And I also think for me in my own personal development, humility is really kind of the most important thing right now. And doing something on a stage that I'm not very good at, I'm trying to be good because I don't want to be a jerk. I don't want to give a bad performance.
Right,
I'm
exactly.
doing my best to be good, but it just happens to be something. If you don't start that stuff when you're pretty young, it's kind of hard to get really graceful at playing the acoustic guitar and singing. And if you don't practice a lot, and I do so many things, I can't practice that much. So anyway, all excuses aside, it's something that I'm moderately okay at. The only thing that I have to offer with live acoustic solo performances is honesty. So that's kind of, in one sense, it's removing a mask, or perhaps it's just putting on another mask, but it's a humbling experience and also freeing at the same time. I mean, just showing up at a gig with an acoustic guitar and a little miniature amp is like amazing after years of hauling gear.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's that. So what was the first, I mean, the reason why I'm asking this is like, I always like it's some bucket list thing for me too, to do that. And, part of me is like, oh, everyone's going to know how terrible at guitar playing I am and how my voice sucks and everything and how I need to have distortion on all the time. And like,
you're right.
Like that is like, so what was the first gig like? Like, what was the setting?
Oh my God. Oh, so it was really funny and strange. So I got invited to play in a cave in the Angeles National Forest. And my friend Joy Shannon invited me. She's this amazing harp player and singer. She kind of does like medieval style songs. And she invited Black Mare to play in this cave. And I was like, that's going to be really hard. Acoustically, I don't think it's going to sound good.
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely.
I had been,
yeah.
So I had been working on this acoustic set and not really knowing what to do with it or if I ever was going to do anything with it. But at that time, I was like, well, that would kind of be the best thing to do in a cave, would be an acoustic set of the things I have to offer musically. And she really wanted me to play. And I wanted to play with her, and I wanted to play in a cave. I mean, that just sounds cool. How many opportunities are you going to get to play in a cave? And so I said I would do my acoustic set there. And so that's what I did. And that was several months ago now. It was maybe like 4 months. I don't know, I'm really bad at time. But so I did my acoustic set too. It was strange. Like, no, my God, nobody, maybe one fan of mine came, but because you had to trek. People in LA, God bless them, they're kind of lazy.
That's like New York, because New York's the same way. I mean, you can't even get people to go from like borough to borough to see shows and stuff. Definitely.
Yeah, they like to stay in their little comfortable places and their venues that they're familiar with. It's like in the little scene, the little subculture. And so this was unfamiliar territory. The bands were strange and different. It was kind of like a pagan scene, I would say.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, kind of a pagan scene. And there was like this lady who's like a high priestess lady. That's what she calls herself, and she has like a little cult following, and she has an acoustic band of women. And so that was kind of like the world that I was in. So I didn't really know anyone there, and there was probably like 30 people in this cave. And I'd never played acoustic before. And everyone, so there's like this thing that happens with all of my bands. And I don't know why, but what happens is people just are silent. They're very silent. They're very stoic. they don't have large reactions. And I used to be like, I was like, did they even like it? Like, are they listening? You know,
it's like playing in Germany, I guess.
Yeah, totally. But it happens everywhere. It happened in Las Vegas with Black Mare, and it's just like, I don't know. It's like the things. I don't know. It's like the things that it's like the reaction that my music has on people. It just makes them be still. I don't know why that is, but so apparently the acoustic thing does the same thing. It's like a chemical reaction. I don't even know how to explain it. And so everyone is really still and like quiet. And so in between songs, like I was really quiet, and I was like, are you guys cool? Like, are you guys listening? You know? And then they would clap a little. So it was incredibly intimate, because I was like 10 feet away from like these 30 people that I had no idea who they were. Nobody had heard any of these songs before, because they were all brand new songs. But after the fact, you know, people said that they really enjoyed it. They had certain songs that they liked, blah, blah, blah. So I guess it was good. It was a very strange experience, though. It was cool, though. My favorite part actually was warming up, which was like there was two sides of the cave, because it was actually a tunnel. And so when I was warming up, I went to like the darker side of the cave where people weren't hanging out. Everybody was hanging out on one side. And when I was warming up, there were actually all these bats that were flying around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was so cool.
This is like, it's like you're in a cave, there's a tunnel. Was it, what did they do for lighting? Was it like torch lit? There's like bats flying?
This guy, he's called Photon Oasis, and he sets up shows at all these different places. And he brings a generator, and he sets up lighting, and he brings like a video projector, and he always has video projected. He's really cool. God bless him. He puts so much work into carrying all this gear up by himself. And he was actually, this guy Photon Oasis, he was inspired by the ghost ship fires. And by the fact, you know, I think probably most people in the underground world know what that is, but it's where that warehouse burned down in Oakland, and was the underground music scene. And so he was inspired by the fact that, there's not really a lot of places for independent experimental musicians to play. You know, most of them end up getting shut down. So he decided how to figure out a roving venue. So basically he takes his setup of light and sound gear to different outdoor places, and he tries to do something every month, I think. But yeah, so he does all different kinds of music. There's no one genre. Pretty wide open.
That's pretty cool.
Oh my God, it's awesome. It's really cool. But you know what? It's so funny, because I'm like, oh, LA people are lazy. I'm totally one of them. I haven't gone to any of them. And I only went to one that I played. So, oh my God, it's cold outside. What am I going to do? So anyway, that's where I played my first show. My second show was super strange too. It was at this last minute benefit for the Malibu fires. And it was a random assortment of musicians. My friend, who has a band called Patriarchy, put it together. She pulled together me, this woman, Christina, who does King Woman. She has a new project called Nightcrawler. And then a couple of others that I wasn't familiar with, mostly. And my friend Iffy, who's Foie Gras. And then a couple of others, and it was a bunch of random styles pulled together at kind of the last minute. My friend Tamron was DJing. It's kind of like a big carnival pagan party again, because the format was like kind of the Saturnalian celebration. And so it was funny. Everyone wanted to like dance and party at this event. And I had it was so Twin Peaks. I came in with my solo acoustic set, and there were probably, 15, 20 people paying close attention in the front. And then there was like a room full of people that were just talking. They wanted to have fun. Like they wanted to dance. They're like, who is this weird acoustic singer, songwriter? So that was good. It was, like I said, it was humility. A big part of the acoustic thing for me is about humility. So it was great to like not be paid attention to, and to just experience that. It's a new polarity I have an experience, because usually I've really fine-tuned the audience, the venue, and the scene that I'm in. And this acoustic thing doesn't really have a home.
Are you planning to do any recording like that? Like any like acoustic recordings? Like that would, be, I think I'd be interested in hearing that, because everything else that you do is like very textured and layered, and there's all this other like technology involved in that.
Yeah, totally. That is a thing I am open to. And again, with the organic process, I'm being very yin about it and allowing it to go the way that it wants to go. So, if someone is interested in recording it, then I would do it. I honestly don't think, for most of the things I've done, I think that I have the means to do it well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's everything I've done so far is so layered, and LVXURI is very electronic. So I'm very comfortable in that realm. With the minimalist acoustic vibe, I think I would need like a real studio or something for that. I don't think I'd want to do it by myself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to get, definitely have a good setting to do that in.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't know what that is yet. It hasn't shown up on my radar. So I'm open to it. We'll see what happens. I feel like it'll probably end up getting recorded eventually.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that there was this pagan vibe at this this cave show that you did. Now, question I have for you, as someone who's been involved in the occult for a long time, this new sort of explosion or interest in paganism and the occult and witchcraft and all that stuff that's been happening over the last several years. Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on it. I mean, I think it's positive in a lot of senses, because it's an avenue where people can enrich their experience in life and personally engage in ritual and something that has a psycho-spiritual element to it. It tends to have a kind of holistic feeling of reconnecting yourself to the earth, which I think is important with the advent of technology that we live in, and the fact that so many of us spend so much time interfacing with technology rather than the earth from which all technology came. Like our phones are just like a bunch of rocks and stuff, mined from the depths of the earth, turned into this technological force. So I think it's positive in that sense, that it reconnects people to something. I do see the element of it that I see as potentially negative is like there's kind of almost like a backwards element where it's like wanting to go back in time. It's idealizing something from the past. When you get really deep into just like traditional witchcraft, it kind of has like this medieval feeling to it. And a lot of the pagan scene has that too, where they kind of want to go return to the forest, return to the cave, which is wonderful. Those are wonderful things to explore and do, and are relevant in our human experience. But I think I like the idea of seeing how that kind of pagan Wiccan scene could integrate technology beyond playing D&D.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what that means, but
on a deeper level, I think also, I mean, something I think about too is in a society like where everything is so depersonalized, and that there seems to be a lot of chaos. Like there's a lot of things that are out of our hands. For example, politics, world politics, like the economy, these kinds of things, that to have some sector of your life where you can meditate on something with intention, and that may cause like a positive change in your life. I think that might be some reason why so many people are turning to like the occult and witchcraft and things like that.
Yeah. Yes. I completely agree 100%. And I think that all forms of what would you call it? I mean, it's not religion. It's
it's like a spiritual practice or like a belief system or, something like
yeah.
that, I hate the word spiritual because it makes me think of like patchouli and like,
right.
stuff like
and
that.
I know it.
But,
and it alienates a lot of people. It's hard to talk about it in a way that's not alienating somebody, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that all of the practices that integrate personal work in expanding one's consciousness, which I think certainly is paganism, the pagan scene, Wicca, ritual magic, high magic, Buddhism, any of those sort of structures that integrate practices which connect one with higher self, higher awareness, and lower awareness as well. Yeah. Both are equally important. I think that those are good for the individual and for humanity at large, and essential, where one is able to act as their own, act and find and integrate their own inner deity as the supreme being of this reality. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah. There definitely has been a huge upswing. I mean, just you see it like in media, you know what I mean? And even, even more like kind of commercial things like, American Horror Story and things like that. There's Sabrina the Teenage Witch or whatever. There's like, there's this thing that's entering mainstream society that has to do with these occult practices. You know what I mean? It's
true. Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh my God, when there was like, oh my gosh, what was that movement? It was connected with the Me Too movement, where this witch group in New York, in like Brooklyn, they said they were going to put a curse on this politician.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It was madness. Okay, this is like the shadow aspect of it that terrifies me about like everyone, the masses getting a hold of witchcraft and ritual magic and paganism and stuff like that. Because if you get a hold of it and you're doing it from an ego basis, like anything, it's going to be terrible. It's going to end up being a weapon, and what all these things should be, the pagan path as well, and witchcraft and stuff like that. They should be a doorway to self, a doorway to infinity, a doorway to build a foundation based on something that is ultimately benefic for oneself and for humankind. And I think that's what they ultimately can be. But you really got to do the ego work and the transcending the ego work for them to work in that way, which is hard to do in a toxic culture that doesn't really necessarily support that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just speaking real briefly about that sort of, the cursing and this kind of darker aspects of it. I mean, one of the things that I think is dangerous about these ideas of, oh yeah, we're going to put a curse on somebody is, I mean, you can observe, and I'm not going to name any names or anything because I don't want to be really out of turn with any of this stuff, but in like, there are practitioners that people know of that have bought, their records by these certain people that bad things have befallen them because of a darker path that they might have taken. You know what I mean?
Right.
And,
right.
And I do believe that sort of energetic, that sort of follows you around. And it's not even like necessarily a magical thing. It's like a mindset. It's like if you dwell on these like darker ideas, that sort of colors your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can
absolutely
extrapolate that into like whatever belief system you want.
Yeah. Yes. Your thoughts are very powerful, and essentially magic is a pathway. It's like a levee for your thoughts. And if your thoughts are all in say you start out as in a victim kind of consciousness, a martyr consciousness, and ultimately what you want is power, or you want to you want to show them, or you want to do some sort of retribution. So then you understand, once you channel your thoughts and you enter into this levy of magical consciousness, whatever it may be, you can summon demons, and it works because it's all basically a gathering of a certain kind of thought, which is power, and which is what creates our conscious reality. So if you're gathering all of these thoughts of sort of maybe vindication, for instance, all of your thoughts are going to sort of coalesce with all the thoughts throughout time and space that have gone into that magical tradition that you may be working with, in order to fulfill and carry out that task of, say, in this case, for instance, this made-up thing I'm doing, like vindication. Mm-hmm. And then you put all that energy into it, and energy is energy. Energy doesn't care, but energy does find a balance. So if you put all of that sort of hateful energy, ego energy, into controlling the will of another person or entity or place, it's all just going to come right back to you, because it's just kind of these currents of energy that we exist within. And so you have to be really careful. If you get into magic of any sort, you're going to be amplifying whatever current you are in, whatever your perception is. If it's negativity, if it's death, death isn't necessarily negativity, but if you're amplifying the current of death, you're going to find yourself in a lot of death,
Yep.
And even I did that with Death Magic Mother. Mm-hmm. And I think that was necessary. But I went into the very depths of death in my own soul, which was reflected in events, circumstances around me. And that ultimately was the impetus to enter what is, because I think all artists are magicians, essentially. And all artists enter a magical current when they create, the muses, for instance. It's very much like a magical current that is channeled down through the highest conscious sphere into the earth plane. And so I very much think going into the depths of the death current of magic ended up being the impetus to go to the greatest heights of the sort of solar consciousness, which is luxury. But yeah, ultimately, I think with all the magic stuff that's coming back, even with like high magic is becoming more accessible to the general population as well, with a lot of new books that are being published on it.
Yeah, there's Damien Echold's new book that just came out a few months ago.
Yeah, exactly. Which at first I was like, well, goddamn, that is scary. Like that everybody is just like, because I have practiced some of what he maps out in that book, and all I can say about it is that, he points out that this is not dangerous. Magic's not bad. Magic's not dark. When he first said that, I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, actually, he's right. Because magic is like a machine that you wrap around your psyche, Mm-hmm. And so if you put yourself in the machine of magic, what magic will do is absolutely reveal any shadow aspects of yourself that you're not aware of. And so it can feel like magic is really dark if you start practicing it and you have not sorted through the deepest, darkest corners of your soul, which most of us have not. And so, my own experience with magic is, holy crap, it can almost destroy you. It can make you lose your mind for sure. But also it can be something that, if you stick with it, it can make you lose your mind. And we all need to actually lose our mind to become free and to become liberated. Our mind is very much a trap. It's the mind you find yourself in as an adult is something that's been indoctrinated into you from society. And so it's important to lose your mind to some degree, and magic can help you do that. And then a lot of times when people start to lose their mind with magic, they will leave magic. But what I found is that it can also be sort of the saving grace as far as an architecture, which takes you through the dark night of your soul.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. My experience with it anyway.
Now that what's like where can everyone find you? Like out here on the internet, you got all these projects going on. You got like Black Mare. Now you have LVXURI. Where can we find all this great music and stuff? Like what's the platform?
So LVXURI is the newest. So it's only on. All I have for LVXURI is Bandcamp, and I have that video, and I do have an Instagram, which is MX LVXURI, and then Black Mare, like Instagram, is actually the best place where I'll update everything that I'm doing goes on Black Mare. So that has like updates about LVXURI, any other things I collaborate on, I do on Black Mare, the Black Mare.
Okay.
And then all my music, Black Mare, Horsemen, starting at the beginning, Black Mare, Ides, Gemini, all of that is on Spotify and iTunes and all of the standard platforms.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about all that other stuff. It's like I had stuff on here. Like I had all this other, this. I'm like, oh, we got to talk about Black Mare, Horsemen. We got to talk about all that stuff.
Right.
But that was like the first, like sort of thing I knew that you were involved with was that band,
Yeah, that was my first. That was my first official band that actually put out a full album.
Yeah, and I've come to meet most of the guys in that band because they played with Mike Gallagher in his Mustard Gas and Roses group.
Oh yeah, Sash and Brian.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, I take behind the scenes credit for that.
Executive production.
It's my whole production. I put them all together.
And of course, Ides of Gemini with my good friend Jay Bennett, and that's on Neurot, right? Most of that material.
Yes, and Jay, I talked to him recently. He said say hi, by the way.
Oh, great, awesome. Yeah. I need to text him.
Yeah, I'm sure you would love that. So yeah, Ides of Gemini is on Neurot.
And what about other platforms like Facebook or you do any? They have pages. Like that.
Ides of Gemini and Black Mare on Facebook. Not LVXURI's not on there yet, but eventually I'm trying to avoid yet another thing to maintain.
Yeah, it could be cumbersome at times. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, but Black Mare and Ides are. And then, Black Mare Horsemen is just kind of a tomb at the moment.
Yeah.
So.
It's an archive, if you will.
It's an archive. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think those are the main ones.
Well, thanks for, making this happen. I appreciate the early hour that we're doing this.
Thank you for having me.
On a weekend. And
yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening. That's all we got this week.
Yeah, thanks listeners.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and this is the Metal Matters podcast. You can find us weekly on the web, iOS, or wherever you enjoy podcasts. Also check out the Gimme Radio app for exclusive merch, interviews with artists, and one of the best metal communities on the internet.